Welcome to another episode of the Jets Life Podcast. We're on to week 4, where we will play against the Kansas City Chiefs, and a lot to talk about in this game. Didn't think, going into the season with Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes that we'd be talking about upsetting all the Swifties and Travis Kelsey's new following in his Sunday Night Football game. It's getting to the point here. I mean, I think we've reached the point with Zach Wilson where, it's almost inevitable at this point. Something is going to happen. Something has to happen if he continues to struggle. And I guess I'll start there with a move that the Jets made during the week, adding Trevor Siemian, former Jet for a short period of time, former Bronco, played with the Bears against us last season. Guy's been in the league for quite a few years now. When he comes in, you're not getting, a top 10 quarterback by any means, but you're getting somebody who can operate offenses and being a historical backup has the ability of adapting to offenses pretty quickly and, using that knowledge to be able to operate his offenses, which is something that Zach has not shown to us at this point in his career. 2 years and 2 games, or 2 years and 3 games into his career that he has the ability to do to this point. Um, do I think Trevor Siemian's going to come in this game? I don't think so. I think you're still going to have one QB1 being Zach, QB2 being Boyle. Um, I mean, unless Trevor Siemian shocks the coaches and has enough of a grasp of the offense where they feel comfortable with him coming in as a emergency QB3 and taking it from there if needed. Um, yeah, I mean all those questions. I mean, who knows the true answers to that? But what I will say about Trevor Siemian, I mean, when you just look at it from a comparison of what we have versus what we didn't, Trevor Siemian's a guy who completes historically around 57% of his passes. Zach's been historically around 55%. This season, a little bit, lower than that even. He's only hit 50% once or twice in the season. And in one of those games, he hit exactly 50%, which was the last game against the Patriots. Touchdown to interception ratios, you're talking 3-1 for Trevor Siemian. And for Zach, he's not even at a 1-to-1 yet. He's actually throwing more interceptions than touchdowns through the first 3 years of his career. And I'm just going with Trevor Siemian for the last 3 years of what he has done. Um, obviously that's maybe a little skewed. He played less games than Zach, but he still has come in. He has still operated offenses to these thresholds. Passing yards per game, they're about even there. Trevor Siemian coming in a little bit lower, about 170 per game, whereas Zach is around 180 throughout his career. And obviously, we understand. I mean, he probably showed a little bit more in his rookie year, and he has regressed in the second year, and has continued to regress here in his third year. So um, again, we're not getting, a world beater here. We're not getting somebody who's going to take us over the top. We are just hoping that we can get some stability there with how great this defense is and with how great these skill players are. We hoping we can get somebody in there similar to what Mike White has done for us in the past couple years, come in and give us a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of a spark, something that this team can kind of gravitate around and maybe excel the play of everyone around them. Right now, it's tough. I couldn't imagine being a player in that locker room where, you know, you're just looking at the way that the quarterback is playing and it's not efficient. It's not good enough. It's not, sustainable. I mean, you look at what the Jets did against the Bills, the opening game of the season, winning that game 22-16 in overtime. Um, you know, you're not gonna do that 10 times a year. It's very difficult to be able to operate in that manner of, relying on your defense to get 4 turnovers and 5 sacks. And obviously, teams have kind of grown aware of that, and we've seen it the past few weeks. Teams getting the ball out of their hands very quickly because if that pass rush gets home, it's only going to cause additional problems. Um, I think the Jets have represented a little bit of a weakness as far as covering, the middle of the field. The tight ends are have historic I mean, over the past couple of years and even dating before Robert Saleh got here, I feel like tight ends have always kind of been our kryptonite, and it doesn't help here, in this game against Kansas City, where Kansas City's number 1 target, offensively is Travis Kelsey. And, I think, we went through the offseason and we kind of had our list of needs or wants from a Jets fan's perspective, and linebackers and safeties always seem to come kind of creep up as a position that you would have liked for the Jets to improve upon. And I think that when you look at how the Jets are being treated on from a defensive standpoint or for other opposing offenses, what they're doing to us, it's been exactly that. Sauce, Reed, and Michael Carter are still doing their jobs. Is Sauce as dominant as he was in his rookie year? Probably not. I mean, he was arguably the best corner in football last season. And this season, he's still great, but he's been allowing, these short completions, which were something that he really kind of limited completely out of his game. These aren't things that you're going to, look at him and say he's a bust by any means. He's still doing his job. He's still limiting plays from getting behind him. He's doing, when a guy does catch a ball, it's usually before the sticks, and he's usually tackled immediately. Sauce is doing his job. Reed, same thing. They're all doing what what we've expected them to do and what we envisioned that they would do coming into the season. Yes, the turnovers are still not there. We had the big game week 1 from Whitehead, but from the corners standpoint, these guys are still not getting turnovers. Sauce dropped an interception versus Dallas. Michael Carter had one that, it would have been a tough play. It was a pass deflected. I believe JFN was the one that deflected the pass in the Patriots game. Michael Carter, it would have been an amazing play. He had to dive just to get his hands on it. But, again, there's a play where the ball hits the corner in the hands, drops to the floor, and had it been caught, he could still be running. Um, but yeah, I mean, just the moral of the story, I mean, these offenses are going to just operate in this continued manner, which is what we saw at the end of last season as well. Just get the ball out of your hands as quickly as possible, get it into one of your players' hands, and see what happens from there. Just don't throw it deep, don't throw four turnovers, three interceptions like Josh Allen did with four turnovers in that game. That is how the Jets can beat you. Turn it over too many times, give us favorable field position. We have Greg Zuerlein, who's proven that he can kick the ball from 50 yards out, and really that is the Jets' offense. Hope to get good field position, or hope to get enough first downs to get ourselves in long field goal range. I mean, in that Patriots game last week, I don't think either team hit the red zone until the Jets scoring drive late in the game. That's the kind. I mean, that's what you're looking at here. This defense has held teams from being able to approach the red zone. Unfortunately, opposing defenses have had that you know, same type of game against us. We have played great defenses. Dallas is no slouch at all. They're a top five unit. They shut out the Giants week 1, allowed 10 points to us. They did have a little bit of a setback last week versus the Cardinals, but that kind of comes off as maybe um, a trap game. Although Arizona has proven that they're going to be a problem for a lot of teams. I think a lot of us looked going into the season as Arizona potentially being a team that'll vie for that first overall pick. It doesn't appear that way. Could it still end up being that way? For sure. But Joshua Dobbs has come in and you know, as a free agent off the streets who just signed with the team, I think 2 weeks before the season started, is operating an NFL offense better than Zach Wilson, who has been, operating. Granted, it's a new offense this year, but still better than Zach Wilson has operated in any offense over the first 2 years of his career. So it's just a little unfortunate there when you look at what this defense has to work with. And you look at the spread in this game versus the Chiefs. The last I saw it was at 9.5. I assume it probably went up a little bit because people were probably hitting that 9.5 pretty pretty extravagantly. Because I mean, when you really look at this game, what is the best case scenario? I mean, obviously, best case scenario is us winning, but I guess it's just a tall ask for what we have here. Because I mean, to hit that spread, you'd have this offense would have to score at least 17 points. And I think saying that the Chiefs are going to score 27 points the way that they've been operating the past few weeks with Kelsey back now, is it really that much to ask for this offense to score 17 points? The Chiefs defense is, a top unit as well. It's not the way it was when Pat Mahomes first got there. That offense was winning games by a score of like 40 to 39 every week it seemed like, and losing games 41 to 40. It's gotten a lot better The offense has, kind of instead of needing to score points every drive, they've been efficient. They've operated. They've done the small game of chip it down the field, and eventually something will open up downfield, and Patrick Mahomes will take advantage of that. Um, the Jets defense does a good job of limiting those big plays, although they did allow that huge touchdown last week against the Patriots on a tight end. It was like a swing route that he got wide open on, a busted coverage. Either Sauce or Whitehead kind of missed the assignment, both converging on one player, letting tight end get behind both of them. But other than that, I mean, the Jets have generally done a pretty good job over the past year and a half. It's a year and a half. It just seems like the season seems like it's been we're like 10 weeks into it already. It's incredible just with how much has happened already that we're only 3 games into the season, going into our fourth game. But yeah, I mean, you look at this team and what they can do here. It really is going to come down to, just fighting. And it sounds as stupid as it is, but you looked at the Packers game yesterday. The Packers were pretty much done and over with, but they did put together an efficient second half. Got the game within reach. Almost had it within one score until a 2-point conversion failed, and then the Lions ran away with it. Um, you're just looking for fight like that. Looking for this offense to just be able to operate in any shape or form. You know, going into the week last week with all the going to the game last week, all the offensive line kind of questions with Dwayne Brown. Is he going to play? Where's Mackay going to play? Who's going to be your right tackle? Um, will Elijah Vera Tucker kick out? Which is what ended up happening. They moved Mackay from right to left. They moved Vera Tucker from um, right guard to right tackle, and then filled the right guard spot with Joe Tippmann, who practiced there for some duration of training camp. Actually, I think he more practiced at left guard, but still practiced the guard position. And the offensive line, it when you looked at it like during the game, it looked like it was a lot worse than it was, just because of the way Zach operates in the pocket makes it look like the world is falling down. But when you really like take the time and look at the all 22 afterwards, yes, the offensive line was not perfect by any means, but there was enough protection where he had enough time to hold on to the ball. I think he, was basically holding on to the ball and just not trusting his eyes. He just does not trust what he sees, which is so infuriating and frustrating because there are guys getting open as well. And if he's just able to trust himself and get rid of this like lack of confidence. That's the most annoying thing about this is that he has talent, he has skills, he just does not have the confidence. It's all he's shook. I mean, and as simple as that. And I mean, unfortunately, we watch these games, and when it's a home game, you hear the boo birds come out, and it's unfortunate being a fan of the team, and you're watching these games on TV, and you're watching this team, you know, do absolutely nothing, and then the fans obviously who are there paying their money, $200, $250 ticket, depending on where you're sitting. That price only can go up from there, especially for the way that the season was looking. I mean, the ticket prices did go up with the acquisition of Rodgers. These, season ticket holders were, you know, they invested a lot of money to see a good product. And when you go through 4 plays and basically all those hopes and dreams go up in smoke, and now you're looking at Zach Wilson, who, you know, we all kind of more or less kicked to the side until Aaron Rodgers eventually retires. Then we said we would revisit this, and unfortunately, that clock has accelerated. He has not developed enough. Um, the coaching staff says he's improved. Um, I mean, I'll trust them better than my eyes. I mean, I'm no coach, I'm no GM here, but their actions speak a little bit louder than their words do. They went out and they had to bring in a third guy. They brought in Trevor Siemian, and I just you just wonder why this wasn't done sooner. Because sending him out there again against Kansas City, who's going to be motivated. Taylor Swift is going to be there for a second week in a row. They're going to be targeting Kelsey like they were last week. They're going to try do whatever they can to run up the score, especially on primetime television. I mean, we saw what the Swift effect was last week. Red Zone Channel was basically watching the Chiefs Bears game. It seemed like for the most part. But this is prime time, and there's gonna be cameras, all over to see Taylor Swift's reaction to every single play. And the Jets fans are gonna get sick of that. They're gonna get really irritated. They're gonna get annoyed. Um, Even if you're at the stadium, I assume that there's gonna be enough evidence that that's what's going on. And when you're sitting there and your offense isn't doing crap like it has the past few weeks, your frustration is only going to turn to booze. And I used to kind of tell myself like, it's disrespectful to the players, disrespectful to the team, which I still do hold a little bit of that. I do think booing doesn't really help. Similar to what Roger said on the McAfee podcast. I don't think booing necessarily helps, but I think the Jets have put themselves in an awkward situation where they have basically, sold us on the season being, the season. This is the most hyped up season that we've had as fans, dating back to the Rex Ryan years. This has been, for after years and years and years and years and years of we're getting better marginally, we're getting better marginally, we're getting better marginally, and then having a great year last year outside of the quarterback position, bringing in a Hall of Fame quarterback, and basically telling us through many media availability that this is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team. We're fighting for a Super Bowl, and for all of that to just dwindle down to Zach Wilson and those expectations drastically diminish, and this fan base isn't happy about it. So, based on all of that, the Jets have really put themselves in a situation where all that this fan base can really do is boo about it. Because, I mean, frankly, it's not fair with how they've handled this situation. It was pretty much, you know, malpractice. After Aaron Rodgers got hurt, there was a reason you went out and got Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson wasn't doing it. He wasn't doing it for us. And the vision of him being a starter was getting dimmer and dimmer by the moment. So September 11th, you get a victory. And I mean, when you look at that game, if Zach would have thrown for 300 yards that game and, you know, control the offense, operate the offense to the point where this coaching staff had enough trust in him. I keep going back to this, but for a fact this coaching staff had no faith in him when you had a chance to put the game away against Buffalo in regulation by just completing a third and I think it was third and 11, third and 9, whatever it was. And instead of throwing the football, they hand it off and say, "Let's kick the field goal and um, let's kick the field goal, give it back to Buffalo, and hope our defense can stop them." Any other team, I can name a bunch of them as far as title contenders. Is Buffalo doing that? No. In that same situation, they're trying to throw the football to win the game. Is Kansas City doing that? No. Same thing. Is Chargers doing that? No. Are go down the line. Is Miami doing that? With their high-powered offense now? No. All of these teams around the league, Philly. I mean, you can really like limit it down to like 20 teams probably that in that same situation would throw the football to try and win the game. And we chose not to trust Zach Wilson. And, you know, after that, after that one like sequence, that was enough of for me at least to say somebody else needs to come in here. And you can't tell me Trevor Siemian wouldn't have been available 2 weeks ago. The only thing that has changed is what we saw in that first game has gotten worse and then it's gotten worse. And here we are to the point where it has to be done. I don't really necessarily like the approach of, waiting until the wheels fall off to fix this. I believe this coaching staff and this front office is safe from being fired because of the severity of what happened. I mean, obviously, things can go way south, and my opinion could be false when we look this again in 4, 6, 8, however many weeks. My opinion can completely turn around, or I mean, this coaching staff and front office could survive to the point where next season is heavy heat on this whole organization to get something accomplished, which wouldn't be great. We've been in those situations too as fans. We're going into the season, you almost kind of inevitably felt that something was going to basically the bottom was going to fall out. You look at the Adam Gase year. I mean, really, there was no reason for him to be around for a second season. He was, and I think most fans, I mean, the fans that you know didn't already not want him to come here to begin with, but going to that second season, I think we all kind of envisioned that that season was going to be um, a catastrophe, and it ended up being a lot worse than we all thought. Um, but I regress here, and we're stuck on this quarterback situation. It's unfortunate. I mean, you look at this game going into the season, it just really felt like a game that was going to be, all the lights on Rodgers versus Mahomes, all the lights on this defense, and how it was going to, play against this high-powered Kansas City offense. Um, and it has literally turned into, you know, a Taylor Swift concert. I mean, it's really kind of what it boils down to. Um, I'm gonna stick out here and, again, I think that it's kind of upon deaf ears here to say what needs to happen for the Jets to come out with a victory. I just don't see it being possible. I think maybe this team comes out super motivated to kind of shut down the Swifty support. Maybe this team comes out to, you know, I know William gave the Chiefs made a comment that was pretty, uh, not optimistic around Zach Wilson's potential and the fact that the Jets are potentially in panic mode, which we are. I mean, this whole entire podcast, I've completely eliminated the context of calling this a must-win situation. I mean, going to 1-3 is not favorable by any means. You know, if we can steal a win, that would just be fantastic. But I can't see that happening. Stealing a win would have been opportunity last week against the Patriots, and we completely failed. The Patriots were missing players all over the secondary, couldn't pass the football. The Patriots are, operating with Mac Jones. The Kansas City Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. It just kind of all signs point in the direction that we will probably come out of this game with our third consecutive loss. I wish and hope that I'm wrong and something happens that, um, if you wanted me to be optimistic by any means, the only way that the Jets can come out with a victory in this game is if this running game operates the way it did against Buffalo. But that was a great effort. I think we rushed for like over 180 yards in that game, or pretty close to it. And if Zach plays turnover free with the caveat of throwing the football a little bit more. I mean, I looked at some of these games and it's like this guy's his passes are going 3 yards, air yards on average per attempt. That is absolutely like just ridiculous when you look at the way the 2023 NFL offenses are operating. The Jets simply just have no faith in him, and as a fan base, we've all lost our faith as well. And apparently, it appears that the loss of faith has trickled its way up to Joe Douglas's office as well. Because Trevor Siemian coming in, granted he's on as a practice squad player, but I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be a point in time where we're seeing Trevor Siemian throwing footballs for his team. That's just the inevitable future, unless Zach Wilson just, by some miracle, turns himself into a top 25 quarterback. Which, I mean, when you look at his, I would say his progression over the past couple of years, but it's been a major regression. He just does not seem to be that. It just doesn't seem like that's going to be possible for him. But if the Jets were to steal a victory, it would be backed by a significant running game, backed by Zach Wilson playing turnover-free football with some plays downfield and maybe some chunk plays in the passing game just to open things up for the running game. And then thirdly, I think it's going to take a defensive turnover. When you look at how the Lions beat the Chiefs, Branch's interception and return for a touchdown, something like that is going to be necessary and needed for this team to steal a victory. But again, I think that you know I think when you look at the spread in this game, 8.5, 9.5, I think that speaks some volumes with the Jets being a home team in this game. Um, that's a very favorable number. for anybody that's supporting the Chiefs at this point to jump on that number. But yeah, I mean, you just wish the Jets can keep it competitive. You just don't want to see something like what happened with the Chiefs and Chicago game, where you know it was just a madhouse in that game. Granted, it's a little different. Chiefs were at home. I wouldn't expect that kind of atmosphere, but um, there could be a lot of Chiefs at this game as well because I mean, there's a lot of Jet fans that are selling their tickets, and again, I don't fault any single person for trying to recoup some money instead of having to waste some of their time to go out to these games where there's just no action, no excitement, no fun. This season was supposed to be fun, and unfortunately, here we are, 3 weeks into it, heading into our fourth game, and the fun is kind of dissipated into frustration, anger, and just looking forward, as we do as Jet fans. It's always a matter of looking forward. What's going to happen next year? Because we're slowly getting to that point where fans are going to start looking at the draft boards. Fans are going to start looking at the college games. Fans are going to start, potentially projecting quarterbacks to us, which I personally don't see as being an option here. With Rodgers on staff next year, I think that that's going to be you would hope it's a position that we utilize to enhance our team in the current year. It's very unfortunate that our first two draft picks of Will McDonald and Joe Tittman, Tittman who got his first start last week and I believe deserves to play. I mean, it's kind of crazy with any offensive line concerns that he wasn't a day one starter. But here he is. He's our starting right guard, and he should stay there until at some point McGovern leaves the team and he want and Tittman moves over to center. Um, and Will McDonald, I mean, inactive 2 weeks ago, and has basically been inactive every single game. I don't know that like I've seen anything out of Will McDonald from being on the field. I mean, it's just crazy to me that you secured this player with the 15th pick in the draft, um, in hopes of him being like your primary type of edge rusher. That's what you do when you pick a guy in the first round. You are picking somebody who you're gonna project into a high quality starter, and the guy isn't even active 2 weeks ago and has been limited in any snap count analysis that you can look for. Um, Something's got to give there. Players are not getting enough snaps, and there are veterans on this team that are stealing snaps away from players that are young, and we need to see what these players are. I mean, I know we're not to the point of evaluating for next year. We're still trying to get wins, but um, Jeremy Ruckert, when he's on the field, the way he the way he blocks in the run game is winning football. I mean, you looked at that Buffalo game and that um, what was it, 83, 87-yard run, whatever Brees had. Um, you know, Jeremy Ruckert had like two or three significant blocks on that play. One in the point of attack, and then as Brees was running upfield, uh, I don't remember exactly, but I think there was a safety there, and Rucker got in his way, and that's what sprung Brees from maybe this being a 30, 40-yard play to now turning into a 50, 60, and then eventually, like I said, 80-yard play is what it ended up being. Rucker needs to be on the field. Um, I mean, it just doesn't make sense for Rucker to not be on the field when the team isn't passing successfully. I mean, I know Ozama has the skill set of being a pass catcher from his days in Cincinnati. I know Conklin, same thing. But Rucker, out of the three of them, has shown to me at least that he's probably the primary blocker. If you rate these guys from a blocking standpoint, I think Rucker kind of takes the cake on that from that position group. So when you're a team that's trying to run the football, I know you don't want to kind of dictate your play by the players that are on the field. But Rucker, I mean, it's not like Rucker is a bad pass catcher either. I mean, I watched plenty of Ohio State games um, during his last season there, watching a lot of Garrett Wilson, watching a lot of CJ Stroud during that year. Um, you know, Rucker is a good pass catcher. He's somebody that you do want out there for those situational downs. And I mean, he didn't have monster seasons. He's not Dalton Kincaid. He's not Bowers. He's Ohio State didn't operate their offense like that because they didn't need to with that tight end group because of all the receivers that they have and they continue to have. It's outrageous how many receivers are coming out of that school now, year in and year out. They're doing a fantastic job there as far as growing receivers that are eventually going to be wide receiver top talent. You look at even this year, Marvin Harrison's arguably. Um, I wouldn't even say arguably. I think he's probably cemented himself as the top wide receiver in college. Um, Anyway, this isn't a draft show. This is about the Jets here, and the fact that they are not utilizing their young players enough. Xavier Gibson, who we've seen what he can do with the ball in his hands, winning the game for us in Week 1, has just not had a role at all on the offensive side of the ball. It appears that Randall Cobb is taking snaps away from him primarily. Um, and you're talking about a team that just needs their players to get separation. I don't think Alan Lazard is separating nearly enough. I don't think Cobb is separating nearly enough. Um, you need players that have speed and that have the route running ability to get open. It just cannot be Garrett Wilson by himself, and that's unfortunately where it's been. Garrett Wilson is out there and he's getting open, and I don't know if it's just a fear in Zach Wilson's eyes. Maybe you always hear about Bill Belichick takes away your primary target. Maybe Zach just wasn't looking at Garrett Wilson under the assumption that he'd be covered because that's what Bill Belichick does. Um, But Garrett was getting open, but there was a lot of other players that weren't. And, not saying this was the case on every play, but you know, it needs to be more around the board, players getting open, players supporting this quarterback. Because really it's getting to a point where, you look at a team like Kansas City, the quarterback elevates the rest of the team. This team needs to elevate Zach Wilson and they need to elevate him a hell of a lot in order to beat really anything for the rest of the season. And that's not just a Zach thing either. If Trevor Siemian comes in, I don't, I the quarterback play will increase a little bit. It'll you know it'll progress, but it's not going to progress to nearly what this team needs in order to be competitive the rest of the way. Anyway, again, sorry about the morbid podcast, but unfortunately, we're in week 3, going into week 4, in a pretty much as close to an unwinnable game as you can envision through 4 weeks of the season. Um, and here we are. Unfortunately, looks like we're looking at the barrel of the gun here with a game against Kansas City. Um, you know, all I can say is just try and stay supportive of this team. Maybe they get a victory and kind of turn this whole conversation around to where next week, we're talking about potentially getting to 3-2 in a game against Denver, which seeing what they've done throughout the season seems like a possibility. But you got to take your games as they come along, and unfortunately, this next one is going to be a huge test for this team from a you know from a locker room standpoint. It's if the losing continues for a team that thought this was like a Super Bowl type season, that locker room is going to get very tense, and I'd hate to see any sort of things breaking apart, but things that's kind of we've been here before as Jet fans. We know what happens as the season progresses, and they keep getting asked why you're losing, why is it happening. These players can only take that question so many times, and only support other players for so long until eventually the top falls off. So obviously, we're only in week 4. Let's hope that we have many more positive conversations before we have to have that one. But that's the situation we're in. Jet fans, if you haven't already, please take the time to like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you for joining.